Global Litigation Commons. If you could all just, starting with you, Shiv, do a brief introduction. Don't need to know if you graduated from college or law school, but a little bit about you and how you got where you are.
Okay, so the question is written, is our litigation experience? So no, I graduated and I went in-house to Harrington. And I went in-house to Procter & Gamble in a corporate counsel position, and I realized quickly that I wanted to be a litigator, and I probably should go to a law firm. So I went to what was then Baker & Daniels, and I was there for the next 14 years. I left as a partner, a litigation partner, on the finance and restructuring team in 2016 when I moved to Cummins. And so now I'm senior counsel of global litigation at Cummins, and our team, our litigation team at Cummins, has 5 lawyers and 2 paralegals, and 6 of our 7 team members are women. We manage global litigation for Cummins. We also support the company in other areas that pose significant risks, such as product safety, emissions, crisis management, and we work with our business and legal colleagues to mitigate risk.
So for me, it's funny because I always wanted to be a litigator, and I do not litigate now. Growing up, I used to watch LA Law all the time, and so my desire was to be the female Blair Underwood when I got out of law school. So I did that for a while. I interned in the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. I worked in the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. And so when I graduated from law school, that was my intent, to be a prosecutor. I quickly realized that I had a few more needs that were going to require a little bit more salary. And so I started exploring a different path. But somehow I kept ending up back in the prosecutor's office. And interestingly enough, I did a small stint at UAW Legal Services and at the prosecutor's office, and it actually turned out to be a blessing because I was blessed with the opportunity to work for the city of Indianapolis in the Office of Corporation Counsel, where they were looking for somebody with a little bit of criminal experience and a little bit of civil experience. From there, I got the opportunity to work with a bunch of municipal corporations throughout the city of Indianapolis, and I met the then general counsel, a woman, at Health and Hospital Corporation. She was looking for a deputy general counsel and said, I think you have the stuff to do this job. I interviewed, met the leadership team at Health and Hospital, and 12 years later, I'm still there. I ascended from being deputy general counsel to being general counsel, and now I'm actually chief of staff serving on the leadership team and serving as general counsel as well.
Great. So I started out as a litigator here in town in private practice. I thought that's what I wanted to do. I did that for 3.5 years when I realized that while I enjoyed that, what I was really curious about was the business strategy that was occurring that was driving litigation. So I became proficient at doing the things a litigator does, but I was really more interested in why the business was doing those things and what they were trying to accomplish in their business strategy through litigation. So I moved to Lilly in 1991 and have been there since. I've done a variety of things, although in those many years I spent most of my time, more time than any other place, working in or leading our litigation group. One of the great things, though, about having a litigation background, I love to hire people with a litigation background because they come in, they must learn a great deal about an arcane subject very rapidly, and then they can go on and learn something very quickly about a different arcane subject and employ that. I think that's a tremendous skill that litigators have that is transferable. I majored in English literature. I wrote my thesis on Chaucer, and I'm the general counsel of a pharmaceutical company. So that litigation training is enormously valuable and transferable.
Now, all of your organizations have great reputations for prioritizing diversity both internally and externally. How have you seen that evolve during your time with the organization and with the legal department? And Mike, we'll start with you since I saw that Lilly recently won the Catalyst Award for advancing women leaders.
Yeah, thank you. We, my leadership team in our legal group, works very hard, and for a long time, before I was the general counsel, has worked very hard on diversity and inclusion. Sponsorship, advocacy, change management around diversity and inclusion, sustaining that over a long period of time is difficult work for any of us and for all of us. It's made easier for us in Lilly Legal by the fact that diversity and inclusion is a corporate imperative. It's a value that comes down from the top, and it gives us a structure in which we can operate. So I have expectations from our CEO that I'm doing things to drive diversity and inclusion of the people who work for us outside and the people who work for us inside the company. Why is it an imperative for Lilly? We are an enormously complex and large global organization. We are highly regulated at the local, state, federal, and international level by enormously diverse stakeholders. And we are trying to do really simple things like curing cancer. So in that context, while we have stakeholders that we have to deal with effectively around the world, we're also in an incredibly intense global war for talent. Curing cancer, curing Alzheimer's is really hard stuff, and we want the people who can do that regardless of what they look like or where they come from, which is why Lilly has taken public positions and will continue to take public positions here locally on issues like RFRA and hate crimes, because we see that as essential for us to succeed in a global war for talent. So that's what we're doing corporately. It's very easy to fit my own personal agenda, the obligations I feel as a member of the bar to improve justice in the United States, to fit it within that corporate framework. So that's all very complimentary and very easy. And while this is very hard work for all of us, I do feel at a company like Lilly like I've got the wind at my back a little bit. And I have a boss who asks me on a quarterly basis how I'm doing. So that tends to focus the mind as well.
Yeah, so like Lilly, diversity is a core value for Cummins. And very simply, it's because Cummins understands what Julie was talking about earlier, that diversity means better decisions for the company. It brings people with different perspectives to the table, and working through those perspectives leads to better outcomes. So diversity is not only the right thing to do, but as a global company, it is an essential business strategy for us. So my general counsel, Sharon Barner, came to Cummins in 2012, and I've heard Sharon referred to as a diversity activist, and I think that is not an overstatement. So one of the reasons that she joined Cummins is because she knew it was an organization that would allow her to make an impact on the issue of diversity, both internally in the legal department and externally. And so internally, in the last 7 years that she's been at Cummins, our internal legal department has grown from about 27 lawyers to about 68 lawyers. And for every single position that we hire for, whether it's an admin position or a senior counsel position, we go through a rigorous process to ensure that we have a diverse slate of candidates. And sometimes that means that our searches take a really long time. Sometimes they mean they're really complex. Sometimes that means we start all over again. But that's okay, because that's really, really important. Our organization reflects that. Our legal organization reflects that. And then I know we'll talk later about externally.
Sometimes it means they hire lawyers I'm trying to hire.
Health and Hospital Corporation, whether it's the Marion County Public Health Department, Eskenazi Health, our Division of Long-Term Care, or even our ambulance service, has the constant duty to try to treat some of our city's most vulnerable populations. And so over the years, those populations change. Their faces changed. We now in the Indianapolis have a high immigrant population, so we've had to concentrate on focusing on treating our Burmese population. Our Hispanic populations have grown, so we have no choice but to be focused on on diversity. In order to deliver quality health care, in order to continue to be a teaching hospital, we have to acknowledge what our community is, and our community is diverse. So we have directives that come down from our leadership. We have directives and initiatives that come down from our board each and every time we get together to say, what are you doing? The city of Indianapolis and the state of Indiana have diversity standards when it comes to purchasing and procurement. Those are 15, 8, and 3. And Health and Hospital pushed it a step further and said, we're going to add 1. So we look for minorities, we look for women, we look for disadvantaged populations and veteran populations. So if there's an angle of diversity, we want to bring that into our business because it helps us understand how to treat our patient population better. We have a growing transgender community in the city of Indianapolis. So we said, what can we do to make sure that community is being treated well? And we opened up our transgender health and wellness clinic at Eskenazi Health. So for us, each and every day, we have to focus on diversity because our population changes, our patients change. In order for us to deliver quality health care, we have to stay focused on diversity on a daily basis.
We're here to talk about women's voices in the courtroom. Can you each speak to why you believe it's important to have women representing your companies in court? Shiv, we'll start with you.
So I think it's important for the same reason that it's important to our business. Sorry. It's important for the same reason that it's important to our business, because women bring different perspectives and different strengths, and we want all of the advantages that come with that when we're represented in court. In addition, we believe that our outside counsel should reflect our company, and we have women leaders in all areas of our business, and we want that reflected in our outside counsel.
I think it's important because sometimes when we're dealing with our cases, for us, we have cases that involve issues related to women. You know, when we're trying to settle a case, and it could be a small issue, it could be a big issue, but when I'm working on something and I have an outside counsel who's trying to explain to me something that's happened with a female patient, she's a mom, and we're trying to qualify whether or not there's any damages she needs to receive, it's helpful to have a female litigator at the table who understands what it's like to be a mother, who understands what it's like to be a woman, who understands what type of issues and challenges that particular patient who may have had an issue is missing out on in order for us to figure out the proper settlement to be able to offer them. Women add to the richness of our business. And so when we're looking at female litigators, I think of things too, I always say there's a difference between diversity and inclusion, right? And so in order for, diversity, I could sit at this panel and never say a word. The panel was diverse, right? But if I don't speak up, if I don't challenge the questions that come to the table, if I don't add something, and if you don't ask me to add something, then I haven't been inclusive. And so in order for our business to be inclusive of the entire community, it's important when we have trials, it's important when we have hearings, it's important when we need representation from our lawyers to have an inclusive legal team that not only looks like our business, but it looks like our community, because then we all better understand each other and we're able to develop and provide a better product. And so when we have those unfortunate situations when we're in court and we have to deal with a legal matter that's come before us, or if it's a legal matter and we're trying to do something productive and good, it's helpful to have a diverse team with women on them at the table so we can produce and have a better quality product.
I agree with all of that. I thought the professor's case was really compelling about the value of diverse teams in terms of getting results. When I'm thinking about managing Lily's litigation, among my obligations is to the client is to get the best possible outcomes in that litigation. It is not the case that all of the best legal minds in the country look like Attorney General Zeller and me. And so if I am not selecting counsel from the broadest population, I'm not getting the best counsel. And so for me, it's really about getting the very best results. We don't pick gender-specific litigators generally, for particular cases, we like to put together a pool of diverse litigators and then choose who are among the very finest lawyers in the country and apply them where they think they'll be most effective. Ellen Boschkoff's tried more cases for Lilly in state and federal courts around the country than I can count, and she's there because she's one of the best employment litigators in the country.
To follow up on some of Professor Maggott's comments, though, statistics show that there are a lot more men than women in litigation, particularly commercial litigation. I can attest to that. Kathleen can. There are several lawyers in here who will tell you that they will be in a case and there'll be 10 men and 1 woman. So before we talk about some of the solutions, let's talk about this issue. Is this a challenge for you and your organizations to find women? Mike, you've talked about wanting the best litigator for your matter, but there are fewer women who are at the top. So has that impacted your organizations in any way?
I was interested in the professor's data and I'd like to read it more carefully about the types of practice where women are most underrepresented. Litigation is certainly one of them. The one that we struggle with the most is finding female patent litigators. Among the most important litigation that we try around the country is patent litigation. To be a patent lawyer, you must first have an undergraduate degree in engineering or hard science. Women are underrepresented in STEM fields. So when you start multiplying fractions, you get smaller and smaller numbers. So the way I think about patent litigators is we first have too few women graduating with STEM degrees, which means, and we have too few women going and graduating from law school and too few women becoming litigators. So the pool of patent litigators is really very, very small. That's something that we would like to do some things to work on. Lily's doing some things in the STEM field in IPS and other areas that is a long-term step in that direction. But I think there are particular areas of litigation where this is an acute problem.
Oh, yeah, I agree with Mike that there are areas where we face this. And we hear this from our law firms, and I'll talk in a little bit about the demands that we place on our law firms. And we rate our law firms on diversity, and you know, sometimes we'll hear, well, we don't have anyone in that area that's a woman, or we don't have anyone in that area that's diverse. But you know, as the research shows, there are women that are. I mean, we're starting off level. What's happening, and why are those women not being promoted to leadership levels, or why are they not being developed by the firm by the firms in those areas? So it's that pipeline argument, and you know, we don't have anyone in the pipeline, and we just don't simply believe that's true. And we think that if you want to work for Cummins, then you have to figure out a way to fix that, or we'll find another firm that has fixed it.
I think for us, you know, Mike made a good point. I think every company, every business wants to find the best lawyers to represent them whenever there's a piece of litigation or anything that's out there. That's our first goal, right? You don't want to just pick a lawyer because they're your friend or you knew them for 20 years or because I've looked at my numbers and I've had no male or no female litigators or out there, right? It's not just about checking a box or meeting a quota. But what I will say is once you've gotten the best lawyers at the team, right, when you're done with the case, you have a responsibility too to go back to the firm and say, well, let's talk about this, right? So, you know, I got the best lawyer on your team. What are you doing to bring other younger lawyers, other female lawyers along the way? I try to always go to the networking events a couple of times a year for the law firms that do work for me. I go because I want to see who are the lawyers that they have. I'm always interested in seeing who the new lawyers are that come out of law school. I want to hear about what areas that they're going to go into because I know at some point somebody has to train and develop them. So, you know, I have a conversation. There's normally, in every firm I go to, 1 or 2 lawyers, and I often look for a female lawyer. Maybe she's a Mauer grad, right? That's how I connect. And then I'll mention it to the engagement partner who's working on cases for me to try to see, hey, and I can tell you, one of the partners that I work with often, I'll send her a text message and say, hey, what about this person? And so those are my subtle hints to say, I thought about it, have you? And so it is an opportunity for you then to pick up on those hints and engage those young women who have come out of school. Or, sometimes I'll ask the question and we'll have a conversation. I always try to develop some level of friendship with the people who do work for our organization, and it turns out to be a mutually beneficial relationship. I'm normally able to learn something from them, they're able to learn something from me, and so when I bring issues up like, we've had 10 trials this year, or we've had 15 different pieces of litigation, and I noticed that the same man has been working on those cases. Do you have any females on that team? And so then they're not offended, right? Because we've developed a relationship. They understand who I am, they understand who our business is, and they understand that when we're asking those questions, it isn't about let's just put a woman on the team. They understand that for us, diversity is important, and when we look at a diverse set of people to represent us, it adds to the richness of our cases, and it shows us that you're committed to the same values and the same beliefs that our organization is committed to as well.
I recently heard a story on NPR about diversity in Hollywood, and the interviewee was quoted as saying, in Hollywood, the moral compass points to the bank. Now, there are not a lot of comparisons between law firms and Hollywood, but law firms do care about the bottom line. So I'm interested in your perspectives on how you make sure that the law firms that you work with are intentional about giving you a gender diverse team and they pay attention to that as a consideration for doing your work. And Shiv, we'll start with you on this one.
So when Sharon came to Cummins, we had over 150 law firms, outside law firms. And she decided that we needed to reduce that number and select a smaller group of firms who we could truly partner with. So we went through this process that we call convergence, and we narrowed those firms down to about 20 firms. And the basic process was that we invited the firms to respond to an RFP, and then a subset of those were selected. So we selected the 20, and we gave them specific areas that they're approved for, and we signed 3-year engagement letters with that. So in the context of making that change, diversity was a key focus, and Sharon thought about, she spent 30 years in a law firm, and she wanted to come up with a carrot and stick method that law firms could appreciate. So none of those 150 firms had a woman or a diverse partner as the relationship partner with Cummins. So in the convergence process, Sharon invited some new firms to respond to the RFP, knowing that if it's a new firm, she can pick the relationship partner, and she selected diverse or female partners for those relationship partner roles. With the old firms, we tried to incentivize them and said, okay, you have your relationship partner, we're good with that, but since you're going to get so much more work, because we're, instead of dividing the work among 150 firms, we're giving it to 20 now, you're going to get so much more work, put a female or diverse partner as the relationship partner on the new work. And some firms, most firms did that, and that's great. Some firms didn't. And, we kept having these conversations, and eventually they came off the list. And then in terms of the new work, and I want to talk a little bit about how we track diversity and hold the firms accountable for that, but we can wait until the next question for that.
Tavona, you spoke about this a little bit already, but do you have more to add on this one?
I'll let Mike.
So we do, I think, a very similar thing to what Cummins does, and that works well for us. We set very explicit expectations about what the diversity of the teams is going to look like. We have fired long-standing firms because they didn't engage with us on that, and we have moved a lot of work to newer firms because they were willing to engage with us on that. I think that's all very important. You need to have an expectation that you're going to revisit that performance all of the time. But I have sort of a thing about relationship, if I can go on my soapbox a little bit. I have a thing about sort of relationship partners. It seems to me that by the very definition of the word relationship, a relationship partner cannot be a person who is imposed on us that we don't want. So we have several times in the last 4 or 5 years asked that a different partner be the person with whom we have contact and who is getting whatever credit a firm gives for the relationship partner. When firms have balked at that and said, well, that's complicated within our compensation environment, I said, well, that's fine. The relationship partner can be whoever you want, but that's not who we're calling. And we don't want him to do our work. And that usually gets through to the point. So this whole relationship partner thing has got to be a dialogue. And I feel pretty strongly that we have an opportunity to influence that and need to influence it. This stems from another issue where I've been a late comer to being willing to have hard conversations with law firms about the way they spread the compensation around for Lily's work. For a very long time, I was reluctant to do that. I felt like it was a little bit like asking you what you paid for your suit or how much money you make. It seemed awkward and intrusive. Ben Wilson, whom some of you may know, who's the managing partner of Beveridge and Diamond and been a mentor to me on issues of diversity and inclusion, said, if you're not having those conversations, you're really not doing anything, because it's the use of the money that a corporation pays and the way that that money is spread around within a law firm, the methodology that is used to distribute it, that really influences how people are recognized and advanced and rewarded. So I have begun to get more comfortable having those uncomfortable conversations about how lawyers are incented. And in doing that, I've really learned that there are really good client-centric ways of doing that and non-client-centric ways. And the client-centric ways of doing it, I think, encourage and inure to the benefit of underrepresented lawyers in those firms.
And Shiv, do you want to follow up on that and talk about how Cummins tracks its diversity and how to make sure that the impact is meaningful for women lawyers at the firms where that Cummins works with?
Yeah, because we want more than, I mean, obviously we want the relationship partner because of the compensation issue and because of, we understand how law firms work. But we also want to develop diverse lawyers. We want to make sure that they're actually working on our work. So we track hours billed by female and diverse lawyers on every single matter. We ask for female and diverse lawyers to staff our matters. Every time a member of our litigation team engages, sends a piece of litigation out to our outside firms, we say, who's going to staff this? And do you have a woman that can staff this? Do you have a woman that can lead this? Our law firms are graded on it. It's a constant conversation. We have a paragraph in our engagement letter on diversity. And then every 6 months, our law firms come in and we evaluate them on numerous factors, including diversity. And we set percentages and we say, we'd like you to this percent of your work to be done by, female or diverse partners. And, when you were here 6 months ago, you were at, 55%, and now you're at 56%, and that's not really good enough, and we would need you to get up to 75. And over time, we meet them where they're at. We understand that, some firms started ahead of others, and we want to see progress. And, over time, if we're not seeing that progress, then they get less work, and eventually they get no work. We grade them on it, and then we internally are graded on it as part of our in-house evaluation. If we as litigators, if our matters aren't being staffed by diverse or female lawyers, when we get our year-end evaluation, we have to explain why. And, sometimes the answer is, well, I was working in this very specialized area and the firm only had this one male partner that could do that and I needed that. And, and then the question is, okay, well, what did you, what conversation, as Tavona said, did you have about developing the next, the pipeline for that? Who are they bringing up? Who's going to do the next case that comes up like this? So for us, it's very, it's quantified and it's constant. And you can't put someone on our work, you can't bring someone in for the RFP and then they never do our work because we're going to follow up on it.
The one thing I will say is we weren't tracking it in the legal department very well. And so we actually went and spent some time at Cummins. And we've talked to some people at Lilly and said, well, if we're committed to this, let's learn how to do it. And so I think that's the important thing for our organization too. We spent many hours in a little conference room at Cummins and asked a bunch of questions. And so we're working to develop things. So I think even if you don't know how, we're smart people. We can figure out how.
Following up on that, you all are leaders in this area. Do you see a role for you and your organization to play to encourage other in-house lawyers, in-house legal departments to come along with this and work on a focus for diversity and inclusion?
So I think it's me. So I'd say yes. For each and every one of us, I think, have a responsibility. One of the other panels said, okay, so how do we pull people up that ladder, right? If we accept the fact that the ceiling is broken, there's a ladder below us. Some people don't even see the ladder, so you got to guide them to where the ladder is and help them figure out how to do that. So maybe part of my responsibility has to start with the lawyers I hire in-house. I have to diversify my team. And then you have to look at the diversity has to not only, if I'm having diverse women, it has to be diverse women. They can't all look like me. They can't be all the same age as me. They can't have all the same interests as me. So you have to think about that too. There's a level of diversity inside of diversity, and sometimes we forget about that. So, once you've taken a look at it at home, because it's you can't be the pot calling the kettle black, right? So you have to understand and fix whatever your issues are at home, or at least try to even the playing field internally. Once you've kind of worked on that thing internally, if you don't already have an established method or processes, like Cummins developed it, like Lily talked about it, we're going out and we're learning how to develop our own. And so then that way we can say, okay, when I am meeting with my outside counsel, and we have outside counsel that we've had long relationships, much like Cummins, I'm learning how to have those conversations that nobody has had before. I'm learning when I look and we have bond counsel. Our bond counsel has been predominantly male. I've talked to female bond counsel that don't necessarily represent us and say, okay, where are you? And how can I network and get to know some of those lawyers so then when we have a matter, they can work on some issues for us. So you have to be proactive. We have to, so I see us having a constant role because if we don't make an effort and start chipping away at it and learning how to make an effort and chip it away at it, it'll never get done. I mean, I'm just like me, and some of you probably realize, you think by now some of the problems that we have in this world should be over with by now, right? But they seem to just keep recycling themselves in a circle. So even if we think we have a solution, you got to come back and reevaluate it and discuss it. Because I think that's what we do a lot of times too. We're like, okay, there's the solution, we're done. Check that off the list, go on to the next 10 things, and then you come back and evaluate it and realize somebody put a nice little bow on that and put it in the shelf. So you have to realize it's something that you constantly have to work on, that, maybe it's once a quarter or periodically you got to come back to it. Or like Shiv says, come and says, okay, we're sitting down with you. Let me see what you've done. So it's an active situation that you have to be in.
2 points that Tavona made that I think are really important. One is, this is a long-term problem, and the effort has to be sustained. And it's not doing it really well for a month that's hard. It's doing it well for 10 years that's hard. And so we need to have people in our organization who are challenging us. Look, have you lost focus? What have you done this month? What's the plan? We made great progress in 18. What are we doing in 19? Sustainability is almost its own work stream. And the second point that Tavona made that I really like is that we've got challenges in my own group. 2 of my fine lawyers are here. We haven't figured this out for ourselves yet. So we need to approach this conversation with outside counsel with a degree of humility, because we're working on the same challenges and problems that you are. So the dialogue is really very important between law firms, and the bar and corporate counsel. If I can make a shameless plug for an organization that I think does remarkably good work in this area, it's the Leadership Council on Legal Diversity. Please take a look at their website. LCLD is made up of general counsel and managing partners who are dedicated to improving the diversity of the legal profession, period. That is the one and only goal. And the organization does some really remarkable convening, and it also has very valuable development programs for young, diverse attorneys and law students.
Shiv, anything to add with that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Cummins believes that we do have an obligation as clients to, we have, ultimately, we think that the client's money is going to have an impact on the law firms. And so we have an obligation to use that. And I second, LCLD. I know Lily's been a member for some time, and Cummins is a member, and I'm sure many people in this room have been fellows of LCLD. But that's a great organization, and that does help promote diversity, and it unites general counsels to be able to share, the best thinking in this area.
And for our last question, since all of you are intentional about diversity and inclusion, and your organizations are as well, do you have suggestions for what you've seen work, what law firms could do to help foster diversity and inclusion for their own lawyers and the team that they're using?
So I don't want to give, I want to change the subject. I don't want to give law firms advice. I want to give in-house folks advice, which is we do all of the same tracking that Cummins does, and we look at statistics. But with law firms, you don't get the complete picture by looking at the overall representation statistics. It's really important that you identify individual diverse lawyers as young associates who you like, and that you pull them into your work, and that you track the development of their career over time, and that you let the management of the law firm know, I really want to see her career develop. That creates a marketplace. And I think that's a much better indicator of what firms are doing sometimes than just representation numbers, which can grow as long as you have fewer people leaving than are coming in the door.
I'd say you got to look at your recruitment efforts if you're a law firm from the very beginning. I think all of us, we talk. I'm a Mauer grad, and so if I'm looking for interns, it's natural for me to go to IU School of Law in Bloomington. I've recently got connected to some people at Howard. Right, and so they have a wonderful law school that has a diverse population. So I'm having some conversations with those students when we're looking at internships. So what I would say to law firms is look at where you're recruiting. And then you can recruit at all your traditional places. There are diverse students there, women of color. There are women, all kinds of places. But look at other places. Look at your historically black colleges and universities and some of those law schools. They have equally smart, intelligent people there that you can recruit there as well. Then once they get in your door, like Mike said, then you have to take an opportunity to work on them and develop them and let people know that we brought her in, we care about her career. And when we don't do that, then she gets pushed to the wayside and nobody develops her. I think if women in the law firms who have already made partner, who've ascended and have gone through some of the challenges, we have a responsibility to mentor other women. And sometimes, I've talked to different women who don't do that or maybe didn't have that. And so they don't understand how to do that. You have a responsibility to learn how. You have a responsibility to give back and help develop some other women as well so they can get to the places that you are and learn some things. One of the conferences that I occasionally go to is Corporate Counsel Women of Color. And it is an opportunity for both law firms to connect with diverse in-house corporate counsel, as well as for corporate counsel to connect with diverse law firms. There's sponsorship opportunities there, right? So you sponsor this conference, you bring some of your lawyers there, they meet all kinds of people. I've met women who came to that conference, now they're working at Google, they're working at Amazon, they're working at Facebook because their law firms got it. I'm gonna sponsor this conference. We're gonna go there, and they're either working there or they're getting work from there. We're used to some of our traditional streams of getting things done. You have to look outside of the normal box that we're used to sitting in, and then that way you'll open yourself up to opportunities. And then, frankly, why don't you just ask the question of the women who work in your firm? What do you want? What are you looking to learn? Where do you want to go? And if they answer that question for you, you can give them what they need, and you'll probably end up hearing a voice that you hadn't heard before, who can also provide some benefit to your law firm and then also be a benefit to your client.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Tavona said, and I think it goes back to the intention issue, right? I mean, law firms and companies can recruit, from everywhere, but once you get people, if they're not being recruited, and if they're not, being purposefully developed, and particularly, talented lawyers and talented diverse lawyers have lots of opportunities, or it's compelling to stay home with your kids, and there's a lot of competition for your time. There's a lot of opportunities, and so I think you have to just say, well, we hired lawyers for good. You're not going to constant.
All right, well, thank you all for your time. We appreciate hearing from each of you.